When the highest court in the land strikes down a ban on conversion therapy, what does it mean for millions of LGBTQ individuals? It's a decision that wasn't just unexpected, it has sent shockwaves through legal and human rights circles alike. With the power to affect legislative norms across the country, the implications of this ruling cannot be understated. Unravel the layers of a verdict that challenges the very essence of freedom and equality. Welcome to Court Decoded. Today, an intriguing Supreme Court decision is under our lens. The ruling against the ban on conversion therapy has sparked debates about individual rights and religious freedoms versus protections for vulnerable communities. Join the exploration of this pivotal case and what it signifies for the future of LGBTQ rights and free speech in the US. Conversion therapy, a controversial practice aimed at changing an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, has long been the subject of intense legal and ethical debate. Over the years, many states in the US have moved to ban the practice, citing its harmful psychological effects and its condemnation by major health organizations like the American Psychiatric Association. These bans, often challenged by proponents who argue for religious freedom and free speech, have formed a complex legal battleground. Historically rooted in pseudoscientific methods, conversion therapy has faced significant backlash from human rights advocates who highlight the damage it inflicts on LGBTQ individuals. The movement against it gathered momentum in the late 20th century, with survivors sharing harrowing narratives that fueled legislative action. Despite advancements in LGBTQ rights, conversion therapy remains a divisive issue, continuously pitting the principles of autonomy and protection against claims of personal and religious expression. Legislatures have found themselves in the crosshairs, drafting laws with the delicate task of balancing the imperative to shield vulnerable populations with upholding constitutional rights. This set the stage for a national debate, culminating in legal challenges that would reach the highest court, probing the very core of civil rights and constitutional freedoms. The legal contention over conversion therapy bans escalated when various state laws were challenged in court. Plaintiffs typically argued that these bans infringe on First Amendment rights, specifically regarding free speech and religious freedom. These arguments hinged on the contention that conversion therapy constituted a form of counseling speech, thus meriting First Amendment protection. Lower courts were divided, with some upholding the bans as necessary for public welfare, while others struck them down on constitutional grounds. The path to the Supreme Court was paved by inconsistent rulings and a growing sense of urgency among both advocates and opponents of the bans. The Supreme Court, exercising its discretion to address significant issues of national importance, agreed to hear a case consolidating these arguments. The stage was set for a formidable legal showdown. Legal scholars and civil rights groups prepared for a clash of ideologies that would have far-reaching implications. At its core, the impending decision sought to address whether protecting vulnerable groups justified limitations on constitutional freedoms, or if such limitations inherently undermined the structure of American democratic principles. As briefs were filed and arguments were crafted, the nation watched, anticipating a judgment that would signal a new era for legal interpretations relating to LGBTQ rights and freedoms. Supporters of conversion therapy bans face formidable opponents, advocating for rights enshrined in the US Constitution. First and foremost is the freedom of speech, a foundational principle that protects even unpopular speech from censorship. Lawyers contesting the bans argued that counseling, a form of expressive conduct, deserved First Amendment protection. They asserted that regulating this form of therapy implied a government overreach into the intimate conversations between therapists and clients. Furthermore, these legal challenges often invoked religious freedom as a central tenet of their argument. Many organizations offering conversion therapy claim their practices stem from deeply held religious beliefs, adding another layer of constitutional consideration. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA, provided a backdrop for these claims, insisting that the government must not excessively burden religious practices without compelling justification. Together, these arguments presented a robust challenge, suggesting that the bans not only infringed upon individual liberties, but also set a precedent that could endanger other forms of constitutionally protected speech and practice. Defenders of the bans were thus tasked with the complex assignment of proving that the societal harm caused by conversion therapy justified such restrictions. Those defending conversion therapy bans stood on the principle that public welfare must be prioritized. Conversion therapy's detrimental mental health impacts, widely documented and denounced by prominent health organizations, became a cornerstone of their argument. Advocates asserted that the harmful outcomes of conversion therapy justified governmental intervention, emphasizing the therapy's ineffectiveness and potential to foster severe psychological distress, depression, and even suicidal tendencies among participants. The defense underscored the state's role in safeguarding its citizens from practices considered hazardous. Furthermore, the bans aimed to protect minors, a particularly vulnerable group, from coercion into such therapies by parents or guardians under societal or religious pressures. This stance aligned with the state's vested interest in the health and safety of its youth, establishing a compelling narrative on the need for restrictive measures. Supporters pointed to precedents where the courts acknowledged the need for certain speech limitations, especially when such speech could lead to tangible harm. Ultimately, they argued that it was within both the state's rights and duties to enact measures that curbed such acknowledged dangers, even if these measures encroached upon broader constitutional freedoms, positioning the bans as vital protective legislation. Conversion therapy bans have been at the heart of broader discussions regarding LGBTQ rights. Rulings against these bans are perceived as a setback in progressive efforts to secure equality and validate identities. The Supreme Court's decision inevitably sends ripples through the LGBTQ advocacy community, potentially complicating the fight for comprehensive civil rights and stigmatizing any retreat from existing protections. Such rulings may also embolden states to roll back progressive laws, using free speech and religious freedoms as bases for such actions. This courtroom clash illustrates the precarious balance between rights protection for marginalized communities and constitutional freedoms. The LGBTQ community, often at the forefront of civil rights turbulence, interpreted the case as symbolic of wider societal acceptance battles. The decision could shape the landscape for future rights advocacies, influencing how states legislate protections intended to promote equality. Additionally, the ruling serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of rights for groups that have historically faced discrimination. The conversation extends beyond legal boundaries, entering spheres of societal attitudes and the potential implications on public perceptions of both LGBTQ individuals and the legal constructs designed to safeguard their well-being. The intersection of individual freedoms and societal safety presents a complex legal conundrum. It is a classic collision of ideals where freedom of expression runs against the moral and ethical obligations to protect citizens. Crafting laws that navigate these tumultuous waters requires immense judicial acuity. The tension resides in determining whether freedom should be abridged when it threatens the collective safety or well-being of the populace. Such legal dilemmas are critical in a democracy that prizes individual liberties, yet recognizes the state's duty to prevent harm. This ruling pushes the boundaries of how harm is defined legally and which rights are deemed paramount. Proponents of maintaining bans argue that endorsing such therapeutic practices under the guise of freedom disregards the empirical evidence of harm, setting a dangerous precedent if unchecked. The court's role, thus, lies in the fine balancing act of upholding foundational rights while not undermining the fabric of safety essential for a thriving society. This case challenges the judiciary to adjust the scales precisely where neither the tenets of liberty nor the imperative for protection are excessively burdened. The U.S. Supreme Court, as the apex court, plays a decisive role in shaping and evolving jurisprudence. This case underscores its position in interpreting laws that echo throughout the legal landscape, influencing future legislative initiatives and judicial outcomes. The Supreme Court's decisions often reflect or redirect societal values, acting as both a bulwark and a catalyst for change. With this ruling, the court aimed to delineate the boundaries where individual rights intersect with state regulations purporting to protect public welfare. The challenge was not only judicial, but philosophical, grappling with precedent, statutory interpretation, and constitutional doctrine. Consequently, the decision will serve as a key reference point for lower courts, legislators, and policymakers when addressing similar issues in the future. Moreover, it emphasizes the court's mandate to safeguard constitutional provisions, ensuring that any state-level law must withstand rigorous scrutiny when challenged against fundamental rights. This ruling's long-term impacts will be observed in various domains, including freedom of speech, religious rights, and the ongoing evolution of civil liberties in a diverse and dynamic nation. As the judiciary navigates this evolving landscape, its wisdom continues to chart the course for American legal principles. In the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling, the conversation on conversion therapy and its legal implications continues. This decision challenges lawmakers and civil rights advocates to consider new strategies for protecting at-risk communities within the bounds of constitutional constraints. The outcome prompts discourse around potential legal reforms that could redefine the standards for assessing harm and codifying protections in nuanced ways. Legal experts are exploring avenues for drafting legislation that navigates constitutional scrutiny while maintaining strong safeguards against practices deemed harmful by medical and psychological bodies. Collaboration between lawmakers, civil rights organizations, and health advocates is crucial in designing innovative legal frameworks that withstand judicial examination. The ruling also stimulates dialogue about other rights-related issues that might now require legislative clarification, raising awareness of the undercurrents within ideological battles over liberty versus protection. While the immediate future appears challenging, it presents opportunities for systemic evaluation and potential advancement of protections congruent with modern understandings of harm and rights. The impetus behind these developments drives the legal community to remain vigilant and proactive, embracing reform as an adaptive response to the multifaceted issues emblematic of conversion therapy and beyond. The Supreme Court's ruling striking down state bans on conversion therapy is a landmark decision with profound implications. The court's majority opinion emphasized the primacy of the First Amendment, ruling that restrictions on conversion therapy unreasonably impeded freedom of speech. However, the dissenting justices warned of the potential harm to vulnerable individuals subject to these practices. The decision places a significant burden on states and advocates to find alternative ways to protect individuals, particularly minors, from what medical professionals have largely condemned as detrimental practices. This ruling could also embolden those seeking to curtail regulations viewed as restrictive to religious freedom or speech, potentially setting precedents for future legal battles. In essence, this decision underscores the enduring challenge of balancing individual freedoms with societal health and safety concerns, acting as a catalyst for ongoing discussions about the role of law in protecting minority groups. As this case reverberates through the legal system, it calls for deeper scrutiny and creative legislative solutions to navigate the delicate interplay of rights and responsibilities within a robust democratic society. Thank you for joining us on Court Decoded. If this legal exploration intrigued you, like and subscribe for more insightful dives into pivotal court cases shaping our world. Share your thoughts in the comments on this Supreme Court decision. Together, let's continue the conversation on rights, freedoms, and the law.